Join me in welcoming James, please.
Thank you for having me here today. It's a pleasure. Usually I speak about mobile and tech, but today I get to focus on a very, very personal passion topic, and it is diversity and globalization. 2012 has been a very interesting year of many records. First, we had the hottest year in the US than we've ever had. On a lighter topic, there was a person named Psy that does a song called Gangnam Style. And no, I'm not going to do that dance up here, okay? I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that. All my Caucasian friends say, can you do that dance? I go, inherently, do I do that dance because I'm Korean? But he had 840 million views on YouTube, which beat Justin Bieber's record of 804 million in 2010. But more importantly, relevant to my topic today, 2012 was also the very first time in US history that the newborn babies in the US were over 50% by minorities. Over 50% by minorities for the first time in the history of the US. Now, why is this topic very personal to me as a high-tech CEO? Because when I was growing up in this country, I did face racism and discrimination very, very forefront. Not in the background like we see today, but I grew up in the suburbs, in the rural areas, actually, now it wouldn't even be suburbs, of Houston. And basically, back in the early 80s to mid 80s, there was a lot of discrimination. I remember coming home some days and our car tires were slashed with painting on our car saying, go back to your country. I remember a few of my teachers who actually sat me in the back of the room and asked me why my lunch smelled different. I remember this as a kid walking with my mother because she wanted to protect me in the neighborhood and other kids were throwing rocks at us. I distinctly remembered this. And why it hits me so hard is because as I look at the world today, I see beauty. I actually see a world that is made up of so many colors, so many dreams, so many inspirations, and I feel like my job is to evangelize my experience so that we can have a better world of diversity and globalization. In this picture, you will see a gentleman, a lot of you have probably heard of him, Jeremy Lin, pretty good basketball player. Now he plays for the Rockets. And on the left-hand side, you'll see Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Very, very distinct, very different, but yet they have one commonality. They both played in the NBA. I remember when I was trying out for the Apprentice. This is my last Apprentice story. And in my year, they apparently said 800,000 applicants applied, but I don't know if that's true. Donald Trump tends to embellish numbers, right? But God bless you, Donald. And in my year, I remember that they called me up through the whole application process, which was 6 months. And they invited me to Los Angeles. I got a call from Burnett Studios and said, we would like to bring you in as one of the 50 finalists that might be on the show. And I was like, I can't believe this is happening because I tried out for a good dinner story, really. I thought it'd be a fun experience. But they called me back, and I remember being in Los Angeles and sitting in a room with a bunch of producers, LA producers, and we all know how they're like, right? And they began to ask me questions, and the last question they asked me is, James, why should you be on The Apprentice? Why should we select you out of all these people? I thought, okay, wow, this is a open-ended question. So what I did was I responded to the question with a question. I asked him, in 5 seasons of The Apprentice, how come you guys have never had an Asian male on the show? I go, I know a lot of businessmen that are Asian. How come you've never had one? And he looks at me, he tips his hat a little bit, looks up, stares at me. I couldn't believe the answer. He goes, James, you want to know the truth? I said, yeah, I want to hear the truth. He said, Asian men do not make for very good primetime television. So I'm looking at him going, you could tell I'm Asian, right? And it brought me back to the experiences as a kid. Those feelings came right back. And I remember looking him directly in the eye and I said, you know what? You can typecast all you want, but let me tell you, when you're sitting around my dinner table, the Asian men are not quiet, they're not background people, we're not only good at math. We can be leaders. We need to help you to understand that Asian men are not exactly what you've always thought to be. And I said it with conviction. And he looked at me and he said, I believe you. He said, I actually believe you. And so my goal on being on that show was to show America and the audience that Asian men are not only good at math. And so every task that they asked me to be on the math team or the computer stuff, I said, no. I want to just do the creative. I intentionally took an initiative to go on that show to show that Asian men can be forefront leaders. And why am I talking about just Asian men? It's not because we're only seeing Jeremy Lin, because there's a change happening in this world. Asia is growing. There's Europe, there's the US, there's North America. Change is happening all around us. Look at this audience today, and I see so much diversity. Change is something that is happening even in Donald Trump's pageant system. In the past, women didn't even want to wear, they would refuse to wear bathing suits in the pageant. And then you look at this picture, and obviously she's in a very, very skimpy outfit. So change happens whether we like it or not in all areas. Last one here, change happens. Donald Trump is grooming his daughter now to really take over. And back in Donald Trump's early days, he would have never thought that. Change is happening in a major way right in front of us, and it's about the collision of diversity and globalization. What you probably already know about diversity, probably a lot of executives here or HR or anyone has thought about diversity and inclusion. You've heard female, age, beliefs, race, religion, retention, Y-gen, X-gen, and these are all right. But maybe there's something deeper going on than just about diversity policies, but maybe in the way that we live and see people and see ourselves, that there's something deeper. I'm going to do a quick little wake-up test. First question, how many colors are there on a Rubik's Cube? 6, right? So 6 faces, okay, we're starting well. How about how many individual faces are there on a Rubik's Cube? Individual faces. So there's 9 on each face, times 6, 54, right? How about the last question? How many combinations are there on a Rubik's Cube? Any mathematicians in here? What's one guess? What's one guess? 54 times? Oh, okay, you're very good. It's 43 quintillion. Whenever I ask this question, a lot of people say, 100,000, 200,000. It's actually 43 quintillion. Did you ever imagine that a little 8-year-old could figure out a Rubik's Cube when there's 43 quintillion results that could happen? It's a lot. So the question is, how do you see the world? How do we see the world? Do we want to simplify things into just race and age? Or do we see combinations like this gentleman? And can we actually drive our society in that direction at our workforce, at our churches, at our communities? How do you see the world today? Even with so many combinations, one thing I've seen is that the world is getting smaller and smaller. 2 years ago, I had a very, very interesting opportunity with BBC. They asked me to take 18 months off of my life and asked me to do a television show all around the globe. And basically what I did was I help entrepreneurs and companies in 13 different countries turn around their business in 18 months, and they filmed the whole thing and created a show called War on Business. So I was the host, I walked in, helped the entrepreneur, not at a high level, but really at a deep level. I learned so much by doing this show because I spent 4 months in Mumbai. I was able to spend time in Singapore, Shanghai, Beijing, Melbourne, all over the globe for 18 months on the road. And I learned that the world is definitely getting smaller. Whenever you go to these countries, they all speak English. Majority countries now speak English. So the world becomes smaller. One email, one click away, I could communicate with somebody in another country or many countries with one click. But I also saw that as the ocean is getting wider, because of technology, we can actually scale much more in our communication. It's actually getting deeper too. There's complexities in our lives that I saw by being in the different countries, whether it's at a micro level or a macro level. When you look at a company in Mumbai versus Melbourne, and you treat them the exact same, if you're a consultant and you walk in and you treat it the exact same, you're going to fail in one of them. You absolutely will. So what's happening is in business, not only in business, but in consumers, we are getting wide because we can all communicate, we have technology, but we're actually getting deeper. So the marketers have a big challenge ahead of us. The marketers have to figure out how do you segment this market properly, because the marketers want us to just be one big group because it's cheap. So their dilemma, they came up with this segmentation strategy. There's behavioral, there's demographics, geography, and psychographics. That's typically what marketers do. I had a chance to spend time with P&G, Procter & Gamble, with some of their executives in the marketing team. And we talked about diversity not as an internal policy, but as an external mechanism or strategy for consumer groups. Procter & Gamble is thinking about this the right way. They're not looking at all consumers and saying that's how we're lumped in one category, but they're seeing that we have different aspects to us. But this is just the US. Let me overlay globalization on top of this. So now what happens when we're a country of 37% minorities in the US? And also now companies are doing business globally and also attracting employees globally. So it becomes very, very complex. I'll give you one story. I took a friend to Korea. I'm Korean. I told him when we go eat, make sure you eat everything that you're served. Don't leave anything because it's rude. He goes, oh, okay, it's an Asian thing, right? I go, well, it's a Korean thing. And so we go, and he abided very well. Every dinner we went to, and nice people's homes, he ate everything on the plate, and it was cordial, it was perfect. Then we go to Beijing. I forgot to have another conversation with him. So we go to a person's home, and he keeps eating everything, and I could tell he's getting really full. But he keeps eating everything, and the host is like, oh my gosh, I feel bad because in China, you want to have plentiful food. So the host wants, it's okay to have leftovers. You're supposed to, you're not supposed to eat everything. But he kept eating and eating and eating, and I forgot to have that conversation with him. Globalization makes things more complex, but we have to embrace it because it's real. So to understand diversity is to understand the complexities of human intelligence and global consumer behavior. If we want to understand how the world works, we have to embrace diversity even in our own country. In fact, I believe that the United States is positioned so well to actually not only dominate globally as we are, but even more so because we are a melting pot. We can actually focus group test here. We have the Vietnamese community, we have the Hispanic community. We have it right here, so we could test it here before we actually launch into different markets. It's a great place to be. We're at the center. There's an interesting study that was done by Cornell University. And this has to do with more for corporations here. They did a study for Fortune 1000 companies and looked at the correlation between financial performance and diversity at the higher level. And a higher level meant they took 25 of the top paying people and asked, do they have somebody that's diverse? And they constructed this model to look at what is the financial, is there an ROI to diversity? And Procter & Gamble asked me this all the time. What's interesting is that I wish I can give you a rosy story and say, yes, there's always an ROI to having a diverse management executive team. However, you will see on the left-hand side, it's less diverse in the leadership, and you can see that it went down. As they included more diverse leaders, it actually went down. However, what happened is over time, when you add more diversity at the inflection point of 25%, look at the results. It goes astronomically higher. So diversity does work, and there is a ROI to it, but the conclusion is that you have to be consistent over time. You can't expect something really quick just by having the status quo. You have to embrace it as differences of opinions that actually make a better result. Global executives and entrepreneurs need to envision diversity beyond internal to external. It's not about policy, it's about market, how to grow your company because of globalization. Here's a quick slide. What do you see? Do you see a man with a tattoo holding a baby, or do you see a loving father? We all have perceptions. How about this one? What do you see here? This is more acceptable for us compared to this one. Why is that? Because we have inherent biases, and in order for us to have this utopic society of true diversity, we have to get rid of our inherent biases, and we all have them. In fact, they start at 3 months. When you take 36 babies, they did a study, and they put them in 3 groups. One group, the babies were African-American babies with African-American parents. Another group was Caucasian with Caucasian parents. The other group was African-American babies with mixed parents. And when they watch these kids, what happened was when you put pictures in front of them, the Caucasian babies who grew up with Caucasian parents would look at the Caucasian pictures 60% more. The African-American babies who were with the African-American parents would look at them 30% more. But the mixed babies would be equal, would be exactly equal. We have inherent biases that start when we're a little kid. And so we have to recognize that and see how we can actually be more diverse in our own heart and our own thinking. So the world is not made up of just Sally or Bob. It's made up of all of us in different shapes, sizes, colors, and that's what makes this world beautiful in my mind. So I take the pain that I had as a kid, and today I'm trying to use that as an evangelism tool to say we can have a more beautiful society if we don't treat it as simple. It's not a simple thing. It doesn't happen in one day, but it happens over time and when we embrace the complexities of what diversity is. Thank you.